Standing before Cheryl, I calmly delivered my decision. I'm moving back in with my parents. If that doesn't sit well with you, then perhaps we should consider divorce. My voice was cold, devoid of any emotion. Cheryl stared at me, shock and confusion written across her face. She seemed to struggle with understanding the boldness of my words, like a punch to the gut she hadn't anticipated. "What are you talking about, Raymond?" she faltered, disbelief coloring her voice. "It's simple," I replied, my gaze icy and detached. "We could use your $7 million inheritance to build our new home there. That's my proposal." A knot of tension twisted in Cheryl's stomach. The inheritance, her mother's final gift, had suddenly become a bargaining chip in my plan. "You can't be serious," she whispered, barely audible. "I'm completely serious, Cheryl," I snapped, cutting through her disbelief. "It's time for some changes." As I spoke, images of our shared life, laughter, love, and the milestones of our children flashed through Cheryl's mind. How had we gone so far off course? At 35, a mother of two, she thought she was living a simple, ordinary life with a man she once loved deeply. But now, standing before her, I had transformed into someone unrecognizable. "You have no right to dictate how my inheritance is used," she protested, her voice trembling with a mix of anger and disbelief. "As your husband, I believe I do have a say," I said, my tone firm and final. "It's either my way or the highway. Make your decision, Cheryl." She searched my face for any trace of the man she had once known, but instead, all she saw was a stranger with greedy eyes fixed on her inheritance. The realization of the deception hit her hard. Our marriage, once the foundation of her life, now felt like a sham. "Fine," she said, her voice steady despite the storm brewing inside her. "If that's what you want, then we're done. But don't expect to touch a single cent of my money." My smirk vanished, replaced by shock. I hadn't seen that coming. Without another word, I spun on my heel and stormed out, slamming the door behind me. Cheryl stood alone, heart racing. The lines were now drawn. This was no longer just about money. It was about her dignity, her freedom. The next morning, the house felt unnervingly quiet as Cheryl prepared breakfast, replaying the events of last night in her mind, feeling the growing anger. How could I have been so insensitive? The money wasn't just some jackpot. It was part of her mother's legacy, not something for me to spend recklessly. Our children, Lisa and Mark, picked up on the tense atmosphere but stayed silent. They were too young to understand the complexities of adult problems, but they could feel the shift in the air. Cheryl managed to smile for their sake, but the smile didn't reach her eyes. After dropping them off at school, she drove to her late mother's house. The empty house was filled with echoes of the past. Sitting in the living room, Cheryl remembered how my parents had often made snide comments about their lifestyle choices, even their children. They clung to outdated gender roles, and it seemed I had absorbed those same views. "I can't understand why you're still working," my mother had once sneered, her disdain evident. "A woman's place is at home with the children." I had never defended Cheryl. I always dismissed my parents' offensive remarks, telling her to ignore them. But those words had been like needles, constantly pricking at her self-esteem. Now, with my mother gone and our marriage falling apart, a surge of resentment flooded Cheryl. I had never truly been her partner. I had left her to fend for herself against my parents' criticisms without ever taking her side. She vividly remembered the disappointment on my parents' faces when Lisa was born. They had openly hoped for a grandson, and when Lisa came, their disappointment was palpable. "Next time, make sure it's a boy," they had said. Sitting alone in the quiet of the house, Cheryl's resolve hardened. She knew what she had to do. Barely concealing her anger, she reflected on how her marriage had become a battleground, with me fighting for money while ignoring her needs. The thought of using her inheritance to move closer to my toxic parents made her blood boil. As she sat among the remnants of her mother's life, Cheryl's determination grew. She refused to let me push her around any longer. It was time to stand up for herself, and for her children. Raymond had shown his true colors, and now it was time for him to face the consequences. The battle lines were drawn, and she was ready for the fight ahead. In the following days, I gathered the crucial documents, bracing myself for the legal battle that lay ahead. My lawyer, a sharp and confident woman named Gloria, reassured me. "Don't worry, Cheryl. We'll make sure that inheritance stays right where it belongs," she said, offering me a smile that bolstered my resolve. One evening, as I sorted through my mother's belongings, I came across an old, dusty envelope tucked away in a drawer. Inside, I found a collection of documents, stock certificates, and property deeds. My hands shook as I realized the full extent of my mother's hidden wealth. The total value, including the current value of stocks and properties, amounted to an astonishing $7 million. I stared in awe. My mother, who had always lived modestly, had quietly accumulated a small fortune. She had been remarkably prudent with her finances, a fact that now became a source of strength and hope I hadn't expected. I never imagined she had saved so much. Accompanying the documents was a handwritten note, penned in her neat script. "Cheryl, I saved this for a rainy day. I hope it gives you and the kids a better life. Use it wisely." As I read her words, tears welled in my eyes. Her foresight and love enveloped me like a warm embrace, transcending even the barrier of death. The next day, I resolved to confront Raymond about his misguided plan to misappropriate my inheritance. I found him in the living room, casually flipping through a magazine. "Raymond, we need to talk," I said, my voice firm but composed. He looked up, irritation flashing in his eyes. "What is it now, Cheryl?" "I found something for my mother." I waved the envelope in front of him. "It turns out she left me stocks and properties worth $7 million. Raymond's eyes widened, and for a moment, I saw a flicker of greed cross his face. $7 million? That's great news," he exclaimed, a smirk tugging at his lips. But his enthusiasm only repulsed me. "Don't get any ideas, Raymond. This money is for me and the kids. You won't see a cent of it." His expression darkened and he rose from his seat. "You can't keep it all to yourself, Cheryl. We're married. What's yours is mine," he snapped, his tone laced with entitlement. Anger surged within me. "You've shown your true colors, Raymond. You don't care about me or the kids. All you see are dollar signs." Raymond stood abruptly, his face flushed with rage. "You're being selfish, Cheryl. I'm thinking about our future, about our family." "What family, Raymond?" I shot back. "The one you're ready to sacrifice for your selfish desires?" He stepped closer, his fists clenched. "You'll regret this, Cheryl. I'll make sure of it." I stood my ground, unflinching. "Bring it on, Raymond. I'm not afraid of you anymore." He stormed out, leaving me alone with my thoughts. I knew this was only the beginning of a long, bitter battle, but I was ready. For my children, for my mother's legacy, and for myself. The following week was a whirlwind of legal consultations and tense silences at home. Raymond's demeanor shifted from shock to cold, calculated aggression. He was like a caged animal, desperate and dangerous. One evening, while the kids were asleep, Raymond cornered me in the kitchen. His eyes were wild, his stance threatening. "You think you're clever, Cheryl, hiding that money from me?" he snarled. I leaned against the counter, my heart pounding in my chest, but my voice remained steady. "It's not about being clever, Raymond. It's about doing what's right. That money is for me and the kids, not for your unrealistic dreams." Without warning, he slammed his fist onto the countertop, making me flinch. "I am your husband," he shouted. But as his words hung in the air, I knew the time for concessions was over. "I have rights to that money," Raymond hissed, his words laced with venom. "You're just a—" I cut him off. "A what, Raymond? A woman who refuses to submit to your greed and bullying." His face twisted in fury. "You'll regret this, Cheryl. I'll make sure you don't get a dime of that money." I could feel the danger in his voice, but I refused to show any fear. "Is that a threat, Raymond?" I asked, standing my ground. He leaned in, his breath foul against my skin. "It's a promise." I pushed past him, my body shaking with adrenaline. "We'll see about that. The court will decide." As I walked away, his voice, filled with malice, echoed behind me. "You're going to be left with nothing, Cheryl. Nothing." The next day, I received a call from my lawyer, Gloria. "Cheryl, Raymond has filed for divorce. He's claiming half of your inheritance." I took a deep breath, a mix of fear and determination swirling inside me. "Let him try. I'll fight him every step of the way." Gloria's voice was calm but firm. "We have a strong case, Cheryl. Don't worry, we'll make sure justice is served." That night, as I lay in bed, I watched my children sleep peacefully in their rooms. This battle was for them, for their future. Raymond had become a stranger to me, a man consumed by greed and malice. But I was no longer the woman he thought he could control and intimidate. As I closed my eyes, I envisioned the courtroom, the judge, and the final verdict. I saw myself standing tall, fighting not just for the money, but for my dignity, for my children's future, and for the quiet strength my mother had always shown. This was my fight, and I was fully prepared for it. The ensuing legal battle was grueling. Raymond's strategy was transparent. He aimed to portray me as an uncooperative wife hoarding the family's resources. But his arguments were weak, more a display of desperation than a solid legal foundation. One afternoon, we found ourselves in mediation, a last-ditch effort to resolve things before the court hearing. Raymond sat across from me, his lawyer at his side, his gaze icy and demeanor self-assured. "Let's be reasonable, Cheryl," his lawyer began. "Raymond is entitled to a part of this inheritance. It's only fair." I glanced at Gloria, my resolve unwavering. "Fair. Raymond has not contributed to this inheritance. It's solely for my late mother, intended for me and my children." Raymond leaned forward, his tone dripping with disdain. "Come on, Cheryl, you're just being spiteful. Don't you think the kids would want their father to have a share?" Anger surged through me. "This isn't about spite, Raymond. It's about justice. You've never genuinely considered what the kids want. This is about your greed." His lawyer began to interject, but Raymond held up a hand, signaling for silence. "You think you can just take everything, don't you? Playing the grieving daughter and the victimized wife," he sneered. I met his gaze head-on. "This isn't a game, Raymond. You're the one trying to take what isn't yours." The mediator, a stern-faced, middle-aged woman, intervened, her voice steady. "Let's try to remain civil. This is about finding a resolution." Raymond's voice rose, cutting her off. "A resolution? She's the one being unreasonable." The tension in the room was thick, suffocating. But I held my ground, responding calmly yet firmly. "I'm not the one being unreasonable, Raymond. You are." I remained calm, my voice steady. "I am being perfectly reasonable. I'm protecting what my mother left for her grandchildren. Raymond's claims are baseless." The mediator, sensing the futility of the discussion, called for a break. As we stood to leave, Raymond leaned in close, his breath hot on my ear. "You'll pay for this, Cheryl. I'll make sure of it." His words sent a chill down my spine, but I refused to show fear. "You can try," I said firmly, "but I won't back down. This is for my children, for their future." With my heart pounding, I exited the mediation room, my resolve stronger than ever. Raymond's threats seemed hollow, his legal standing weak. I had the law on my side, and I would fight to protect what was rightfully mine. The weeks leading up to the court hearing were a blur of legal preparation. Gloria, my lawyer, worked tirelessly with me to ensure we were ready. The kids stayed with my sister during this time, shielded from the worst of the turmoil. I missed them dearly, but I knew this fight was not just for me. It was for their future. Finally, the day of the court hearing arrived. As I stood in the courtroom, I steeled myself for the battle ahead. Raymond's lawyer spun a narrative of a wronged husband, deprived of his rightful share. But Gloria's questioning was sharp, and his claims crumbled under scrutiny. During a recess, Raymond confronted me in the hallway, his face twisted in rage. "You're ruining everything, Cheryl. You think you're going to walk away with all that money," he hissed. Despite the fear gnawing at my resolve, I stood my ground. "It's not your money, Raymond. It never was." He stepped closer, his voice a venomous whisper. "I'll drag this out as long as it takes. I'll bleed you dry with legal fees." I met his intense gaze without flinching. "Do what you must. But I won't let you bully me." As we returned to the courtroom, I felt a surge of empowerment. Raymond's threats seemed more empty than ever, his bravado nothing but a facade. When the final verdict was read, it was a victory. The judge acknowledged my rightful claim to the inheritance, declaring it mine. Raymond's face as the judgment was delivered was a mirror of defeat. His case had fallen apart, and his battle was over. But though the legal battle was won, the emotional toll was heavier. I had won the inheritance, but I had lost my marriage. The family I had once cherished was now fractured beyond repair. In the weeks that followed, Raymond's life began to unravel. His reputation, built on lies and intimidation, crumbled. I heard rumors of his job loss, his financial ruin, and the disintegration of his social circle. It was a dramatic fall from grace, and though I felt no joy in his misfortune, there was a sense of justice in his downfall. One evening, a mutual acquaintance called me. "Cheryl, have you heard about Raymond?" they asked. I hesitated, then replied, "No." "What about him?" "He's moving out of town," they said. "Lost his job, his house. He's pretty much broke." A complex emotion welled up inside me, something close to satisfaction, but not quite. Raymond had sought to destroy me, but in the end, it was his own actions that led to his demise. After the call, I looked at a picture of my children on the mantel. This battle had been for them. for their future. That night, as I tucked them into bed, I felt a deep sense of peace. The battle was over and we had emerged stronger. We were finally free from Raymond's shadow. In the months that followed, life took on a new rhythm. The court victory had granted me closure, but more importantly, it marked the beginning of a new journey, one of healing and rebuilding. I decided it was time to sell the house, the place where so many bitter memories had been made. As I packed each item, it felt like a step further from my past with Raymond, a stride toward a better future for Lisa and Mark. One day, while sorting through old boxes in the attic, I stumbled upon a photograph of Raymond and me in happier times. For a moment, I allowed myself to grieve for the life I had imagined, for the love I had believed in. But as I stared at his smiling face, I realized the man in that photo no longer existed. He had revealed his true nature, and it was far from the image I had once cherished. With a sense of finality, I threw the photo into the trash, a symbolic gesture of letting go. Moving to a new town offered us a fresh start. I found a cozy home in a welcoming neighborhood, and the kids quickly adapted to their new school, making friends easily. I turned more of my focus to writing, finding solace and creating new worlds with my words. One evening, as I tucked Lisa into bed, she looked up at me with her wide, innocent eyes and asked, "Mom, do you miss Dad?" Her question caught me off guard. "Sometimes," I said softly, "I miss who I thought your dad was. But we're better off now. We're a strong team, just the three of us." She nodded, her eyes reflecting a wisdom beyond her years. "I like it here, Mom. I like our new home." Her words filled me with warmth. We had come so far, and though the road ahead still held challenges, I knew we were stronger than ever. As I lay in bed that night, I reflected on Raymond's downfall. His greed and malice had backfired spectacularly, leaving him with nothing. And yet here we were, rebuilding, finding joy in our new life. There was no joy in his misfortunes, but there was a sense of justice in how everything had unfolded. The kids and I had a long journey of healing ahead, but we were on the right path. The inheritance, now securely invested, would provide for their education and our future. As I closed my eyes, thoughts of my mother came to me, her strength, her foresight. She had truly been our salvation. With a sense of peace settling over me, I drifted off to sleep. The storm that had once threatened to consume us had passed, leaving clarity and hope in its wake. We were ready for whatever lay ahead, with renewed spirits and optimism.